Natasha Bennett wiped flour from her hands and glanced at the clock hanging above her bakery counter. 11:30 at night. The city outside her windows had grown quiet, with only occasional cars passing by on the rain-slicked street. She should have closed hours ago, but the custom wedding cake order for tomorrow demanded perfection, and perfection required time. Her small bakery, Sweet Surrender, sat tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop on the east side of the city. It was not fancy or glamorous, just a warm space filled with the scent of vanilla, chocolate, and fresh bread. This place was her dream made real, built from years of saving, studying, and refusing to give up when life pushed back. She hummed softly as she piped delicate sugar flowers onto the third tier of the wedding cake. Her back ached from standing all day, but she did not mind. Each creation that left her kitchen carried a piece of her heart. When people tasted her desserts, they tasted her passion, her dedication, her story. The lights flickered once, then twice. Then the entire bakery plunged into complete darkness. Natasha froze, her piping bag suspended in midair. The hum of her refrigerators died. The soft jazz music playing from her phone cut off abruptly. Even the streetlights outside vanished, leaving the city wrapped in unusual blackness. Her heart began to pound. The wedding cake sat, half-finished, before her. Without power, her refrigerators would warm, her ingredients would spoil, and tomorrow's delivery would become impossible. She fumbled for her phone, using its faint light to navigate toward the front windows. Outside, the entire neighborhood had gone dark. No lights glowed in any building. No traffic signals blinked their familiar patterns. The blackout stretched as far as she could see. A knock at her door made her jump. Through the glass, she saw the silhouette of a tall man standing in the rain. Her instincts screamed to ignore him, to stay safe behind locked doors. But something in his posture, the way he stood with shoulders slightly hunched against the downpour, made her hesitate. She cracked the door open just enough to speak through the gap. "We are closed." "I know," the man said, his voice deep and tired. "I am not looking for food. My car died 2 blocks away. My phone is dead. I just need to wait somewhere dry until the power comes back." Rain dripped from his dark hair and soaked through his expensive-looking coat. Even in the darkness, she could tell he did not belong in this neighborhood. Everything about him spoke of money and success, from his tailored clothes to the watch glinting on his wrist. Common sense told her to send him away. But Natasha had never been good at ignoring people in need. She had spent too many cold nights alone herself to turn away someone asking for basic shelter. She opened the door wider. "Come in, but stay near the front. I have work to finish." "Thank you," he said simply, stepping inside and shaking water from his coat. Natasha lit several candles around her workspace, casting flickering shadows across the walls. The man settled onto a chair near the windows, far enough away to give her space, but close enough that she could see him in the candlelight. He was handsome in a way that made her nervous. Sharp jawline, intense eyes that seemed to notice everything, and an air of confidence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in any room. Yet right now, dripping wet and stranded, he looked surprisingly human. "I am Victor," he offered, after several minutes of silence. "Natasha," she replied, focusing on her piping work. The cake demanded steady hands, and her hands were far from steady with this stranger watching. "You are working late," he observed. "Wedding tomorrow. The bride has been dreaming of this cake since she was 12 years old. I cannot disappoint her." Victor stood and moved closer, drawn by curiosity. In the candlelight, he studied the intricate sugar flowers she was creating. "That is incredible. You made all of this by hand?" "Every piece," Natasha confirmed, allowing herself a small smile of pride. "Baking is not just my job. It is how I speak when words are not enough." Something in her statement made Victor pause. He looked at her differently then, with genuine interest rather than polite observation. I understand that feeling. Most people think I am in tech because of money or power, but really, I love solving puzzles, making impossible things possible. They fell into conversation, as naturally as old friends reuniting. Natasha learned he had been driving home from a business dinner when the blackout hit. Victor discovered. She had opened Sweet Surrender only 2 years ago after working 3 jobs to save enough money. Hours passed without either of them noticing. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows. The candles burned lower, creating an intimate circle of warmth in the dark bakery. They talked about childhood dreams, favorite books, the moments that shaped who they became. "Do you ever wonder if you are living the right life?" Victor asked suddenly, his voice quieter than before. Natasha set down her piping bag and really looked at him. Beneath the expensive clothes and confident exterior, she saw something lonely, something searching. "Every single day," she admitted. "But then I remember that doubt means I still care. I am still trying. That has to count for something." Victor smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "You are wise for someone so young." "I am 28, not 12, she laughed, "and wisdom usually comes from making spectacular mistakes." "Then I must be incredibly wise," he said with unexpected humor. "I have made more than my share." As dawn approached, the power suddenly surged back to life. Lights blazed, refrigerators hummed, and the spell of their candle-lit sanctuary broke. Natasha blinked in the sudden brightness, feeling oddly exposed. Victor stood, gathering his now dry coat. "I should go. Thank you for letting me stay. You saved me from a miserable night." "You are welcome," Natasha said, surprised by how much she did not want him to leave. He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your cake is beautiful. That bride is very lucky." After he left, Natasha noticed an envelope on the counter where he had been sitting. Inside, she found 5 crisp $100 bills and a note written in bold, confident handwriting. "For the candles, the company, and reminding me what real passion looks like. Thank you, Natasha. Victor." She pressed the note to her chest, her heart racing with emotions she could not name. She did not know his last name, where he lived, or if she would ever see him again. But somehow, in the space of one unexpected night, a stranger had touched, something deep inside her that she thought she had locked away forever. The wedding cake sat finished before her, perfect and complete. But all Natasha could think about was the man who had sat in her bakery and talked to her like she mattered. Like her dreams and thoughts and words were worth his time. She carefully stored the note in her apron pocket, telling herself it was just a sweet gesture from a grateful stranger. But her heart whispered a different truth. Something had shifted during that blackout, something that felt like the beginning of a story she desperately wanted to read until the very last page. 3 weeks passed since the blackout, and Natasha had almost convinced herself that Victor was just a beautiful memory. She kept his note tucked in her bedroom drawer, taking it out occasionally to read the words that made her heart flutter. With foolish hope, her bakery had grown busier, which she welcomed. More work meant less time to daydream about a man whose last name she did not even know. She was boxing up a dozen cupcakes for a regular customer when her phone rang. "Sweet Surrender, this is Natasha." "Miss Bennett, this is Catherine Morris. From Morrison Events," a crisp, professional voice announced. "We are organizing the annual Tech Innovation Summit next month, and we would like to hire you to provide desserts for 300 guests. Natasha nearly dropped the phone. Morrison Events handled only the biggest, most prestigious gatherings in the city. This was the kind of opportunity that could transform her small bakery into something much bigger. "I would be honored," she managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady. "Wonderful. We will send the contract details today. The event takes place at the Grand Meridian Hotel. 4 different dessert stations, all showcasing your signature style. Budget is generous. We want spectacular. After hanging up, Natasha screamed with joy, startling the customer still waiting for her cupcakes. She immediately called her best friend Sophie, who worked as a graphic designer downtown. Sophie, you will not believe this. Morrison Events just hired me for the Tech Innovation Summit, Sophie squealed through the phone. Natasha, that is incredible. Do you know how many important people attend that conference? This could change everything for you. The following weeks blurred into a frenzy of recipe testing, supply ordering, and careful planning. Natasha wanted every dessert to tell a story, to make guests stop and really taste instead of just eating mindlessly. She created chocolate sculptures that looked like circuit boards, vanilla cakes decorated with edible gold leaf, and miniature fruit tarts arranged like colorful computer pixels. The night before the summit, she barely slept. Her kitchen staff of 3 part-time helpers had worked until midnight, preparing everything that could be made in advance. Now standing in her quiet apartment, Natasha felt the weight of this opportunity pressing down on her shoulders. This was her chance to prove. Sweet surrender deserved recognition. She could not mess this up. The Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom took her breath away when she arrived early the next morning. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Everything gleamed with wealth and sophistication. She and her team set up 4 dessert stations throughout the ballroom, arranging each creation with artistic precision. Conference attendees would not arrive until the evening reception, giving her all day to ensure perfection. By 6 o'clock, guests began flooding into the ballroom. Natasha stood near her largest dessert station, watching successful people in expensive clothes, networking and laughing. She felt out of place in her simple black dress, but she held her head high. Her desserts belonged here, even if she sometimes questioned whether she did. The keynote speaker was scheduled to address the crowd at 7. Natasha was arranging fresh flowers around her chocolate sculptures when the room suddenly grew quieter. She glanced up to see what had captured everyone's attention. Her heart stopped. Walking onto the stage with confident strides was Victor, the same Victor who had spent that night in her bakery. But this Victor wore a perfectly tailored suit and commanded the room with natural authority. Behind him, a massive screen displayed his name and title. Victor Sutherland, Chief Executive, Officer, Sutherland Technologies. Natasha felt the blood drain from her face. The man she had shared her dreams with, the man who had listened to her talk about flour and sugar like they were precious treasures, was one of the wealthiest tech entrepreneurs in the country. She had seen his face on magazine covers at grocery store checkouts. His company had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence, and she had served him tea in mismatched cups while wearing a flour-dusted apron. Victor began speaking about innovation and taking risks. But Natasha barely heard his words. Her mind was spinning too fast. He had known who he was that night. He had let her ramble about her small bakery dreams without once mentioning he ran a multi-billion-dollar company. When his speech ended to thunderous applause, Natasha tried to slip away to the kitchen, but before she could escape, a hand gently caught her elbow. Natasha! She turned to find Victor standing there, his eyes bright with surprise and something that looked like joy. Up close, he was even more handsome than she remembered, but now she saw him clearly. This was not just a kind stranger. This was someone who lived in a completely different universe than hers. "You are the dessert chef," he said, his voice warm with genuine delight. "I should have guessed. These creations are stunning, just like your cakes." "You did not tell me who you were," Natasha said quietly, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "You did not ask," Victor replied simply. "That night, I was just a man, grateful for shelter and good conversation. I did not want to be Victor Sutherland, CEO. I just wanted to be Victor." People were starting to notice them talking. Natasha saw phones being raised, cameras pointing in their direction. A tall man in an expensive suit approached, his expression tight with disapproval. "Victor, the investors are waiting," the man said, his eyes flickering over Natasha with barely concealed judgment. "Give me a moment, James," Victor said without looking away from Natasha. James, who Natasha guessed was some kind of business partner or assistant, did not move. "The senator and his wife specifically requested to meet you. Now." The unspoken message was clear. Victor needed to stop wasting time with the help and attend to important people. Victor's jaw tightened, but he finally turned to James. "Tell them, I will be right there." After James walked away stiffly, Victor focused back on Natasha. "Can I see you later? After this reception ends?" "I do not think that is a good idea," Natasha said, hating how small her voice sounded. "You are Victor Sutherland. I make cakes for a living. We do not exactly run in the same circles." "I do not care about circles," Victor said intensely. "I care about finding someone real in a world full of people pretending. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Before Natasha could respond, Sophie appeared at her side, eyes wide with alarm. "Natasha, we need to restock the chocolate station now." It was clearly an excuse to pull her away, and Natasha took it gratefully. "I have to work, Victor. Congratulations on your speech." She hurried away before he could say anything else, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear. Sophie dragged her into the kitchen and closed the door behind them. "That was Victor Sutherland," Sophie hissed. "The Victor Sutherland! How do you know him?" Natasha collapsed onto a stool, her legs suddenly weak. She told Sophie everything about the blackout night, leaving out only the parts that felt too personal to share. Sophie listened with growing concern. "Natasha, you need to be careful. Men like that do not have real relationships with women like us. We are entertainment. A fun story they tell their rich friends." "He was not like that," Natasha protested weakly. "Maybe not that night," Sophie said gently. "But look around. Look at where you are and where he is. I love you, and I do not want to see you hurt." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Natasha focused on her work, replenishing dessert stations and chatting with guests who praised her creations. But she felt Victor's eyes on her constantly. Every time she glanced up, he was watching her from across the room, even while talking to important people in expensive suits. As the reception wound down, a waiter handed Natasha a folded note. She recognized the bold handwriting immediately. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. The coffee shop on 5th and Maple. Please come. We need to talk. Victor." She stood holding the note, torn between hope and fear. Sophie was right. Getting involved with someone like Victor Sutherland was dangerous. Their worlds were too different. The ending was obvious before the story even began. But then she remembered how he had looked at her during the blackout. Not like she was beneath him or unimportant. Like she was someone worth knowing, worth listening to, worth his time. That night, alone in her apartment, Natasha stared at the ceiling and made a decision. She would meet him tomorrow. She would listen to what he had to say. And then she would decide if some risks were worth taking, even when the odds of getting hurt were almost certain, because maybe, just maybe, Sophie was wrong. Maybe some connections were strong enough to bridge even the widest gaps between different worlds. She fell asleep with Victor's note pressed against her heart, hoping she was not making the biggest mistake of her life. Natasha arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, her stomach twisted in nervous knots. She had changed clothes 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a simple cream sweater. Nothing too fancy. Nothing that looked like she was trying too hard. The coffee shop was small and cozy, filled with the rich aroma of espresso and fresh pastries. She chose a table near the window where she could watch the street, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea she barely tasted. When Victor walked through the door at exactly 2 o'clock, every head in the coffee shop turned. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a dark sweater, but he still carried that unmistakable presence that made people notice. His eyes found hers immediately, and his face lit up with relief. "You came," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I was afraid you would not." "I almost did not," Natasha admitted. "Victor, I need to understand something. What do you want from me? What is this?" He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "Honesty? I have not stopped thinking about you since that night. The way you talked about your work with such passion. The way you listened like my words actually mattered. I meet hundreds of people every week, Natasha, but none of them see me the way you did. That is because I did not know who you were," she pointed out. "Exactly," Victor said intensely. "You saw me. Not my bank account or my company or my reputation. Just me. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world?" Natasha wanted to believe him. Everything in her heart was screaming to trust the sincerity in his eyes. But her practical mind kept throwing up warning signs. "Your world and my world are completely different, Victor. I saw the way your business partner looked at me last night, like I was something stuck to his shoe." "James is protective and suspicious of everyone," Victor said, his jaw tightening. "He thinks everyone wants something from me, but I know you are different." Before Natasha could respond, a young woman approached their table, phone held up. "Excuse me, are you Victor Sutherland? Can I get a picture?" Victor smiled politely but shook his head. "I am having a private conversation right now, maybe another time." The woman looked disappointed, but walked away. However, Natasha noticed several other people in the coffee shop now staring at them. Phones discreetly pointed in their direction. The moment of privacy had shattered. "This is what I mean," Natasha said quietly. "You cannot even have coffee without people watching. How could we ever have something normal?" Victor leaned forward, his voice urgent. "We create our own normal. Natasha, I am asking for a chance, just one real chance to see where this could go. Will you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Somewhere. Private, just the two of us?" Against every logical thought in her head, Natasha heard herself saying yes. The next evening, Victor sent a car to pick her up. But instead of taking her to a fancy restaurant, the driver brought her to a stunning penthouse apartment overlooking the river. Victor greeted her at the door, wearing an apron over his dress shirt. "I am cooking for you," he announced with a sheepish smile. "Fair warning, I am much better with computers than with kitchens, but I wanted to do something personal." The penthouse was beautiful but surprisingly warm. Books lined the walls, comfortable furniture invited sitting and talking. It felt lived in rather than just displayed. Dinner was simple pasta that Victor had clearly stressed over, and it was slightly overcooked, but made with such obvious care that Natasha found it endearing. They talked for hours, sharing stories about their families, their failures, the moments that taught them who they wanted to become. "My father built Sutherland Technologies from nothing," Victor told her over wine. "He worked himself to death, literally. Heart attack at 52. Everyone expected me to step in and continue his legacy. Sometimes I wonder if I am living my life or just playing a role he wrote for me." Natasha reached across the table and took his hand. "The Victor I met during the blackout seemed pretty real to me. Maybe that is who you are when nobody is expecting anything." He squeezed her hand, his eyes intense. "That is exactly who I want to be with you." For 3 weeks, they existed in a private bubble. Victor would visit her bakery late at night after her staff left. She would cook dinner in his penthouse while he told her about business deals she barely understood. They talked and laughed, and slowly, carefully, began to fall in love. But privacy never lasts forever. A tabloid published photos of them leaving his penthouse building together. The headline screamed, "Tech Billionaire's Mystery Baker Romance." Within hours, the story exploded across social media and gossip sites. Natasha's phone would not stop ringing. Reporters camped outside Sweet Surrender. Customers came in, not for her desserts, but to ask invasive questions about her relationship. Her business Instagram filled with cruel comments accusing her of using Victor for money and fame. The breaking point came when a vicious online article suggested Natasha had orchestrated the blackout meeting, that she had targeted Victor deliberately, that Sweet Surrender's recent success was bought with his money rather than earned through her talent. She read the article alone in her apartment, tears streaming down her face. Every ugly word confirmed her deepest fears. She did not belong in Victor's world. She was damaging his reputation and destroying her own in the process. When Victor called that evening, she had made her decision. "We need to stop seeing each other," she said, her voice breaking. "This is not working. The media is destroying both of us." "I do not care what the media says," Victor said urgently. "Natasha, please do not do this." "I care," she whispered. "I care that my bakery is becoming a circus. I care that people think I am using you. I care that your business partners probably hate me. This is too hard, Victor. We were foolish to think it could work." She hung up before he could respond, then turned off her phone and cried until she had no tears left. 2 days later, Victor called a press conference. Natasha watched it on her laptop, her heart breaking all over again at the sight of his face. "Want to address the recent media speculation about my personal life," Victor began, his voice firm and clear. 3 months ago, I met someone extraordinary, not at a business conference or a charity gala, in a small bakery during a blackout. She gave me shelter without knowing who I was. She talked to me like I was just another person, not a bank account or a business opportunity. He paused, looking directly into the camera. "Her name is Natasha Bennett, and she is the most genuine, talented, hard-working person I have ever met. The media has treated her terribly, questioning her character and her success. Let me be absolutely clear. Natasha built Sweet Surrender through her own talent and dedication. I have never given her money or used my influence to help her business. She does not need my help. Her work speaks for itself." Natasha's hands covered, her mouth as Victor continued. "I am tired of living in a world where genuine connection is treated with suspicion, where people cannot be seen together without cruel speculation. Natasha Bennett makes me want to be better. She reminds me that success means nothing if you lose yourself achieving it, and I will not apologize for caring about someone real in a world full of pretense." He looked directly at the camera again. "Natasha, if you are watching this, I am asking you publicly, will you give us another chance? Not hiding in shadows, but facing the world together." Natasha was already grabbing her keys before the press conference ended. She drove to Sutherland Technologies, her heart pounding, and somehow talked her way past security to his office floor. Victor stood alone by the windows when she burst through his office door. He turned, hope and fear warring on his face. That was either incredibly romantic or completely insane, Natasha said breathlessly. "Probably both," Victor admitted. "But I meant every word." She crossed the distance between them in 3 steps and kissed him. Really kissed him, pouring all her fear and hope and love into that single moment. "We are going to face a lot of judgment," she whispered when they finally pulled apart. "I know," Victor said, resting his forehead against hers. "People will always question if we belong together. Let them question. This will not be easy." "Nothing worth having ever is," Victor said softly. "But I would rather face a difficult journey with you than an easy road with anyone else." 6. Months later, they stood together at the opening ceremony of the Sutherland Bennett Foundation, an organization dedicated to providing loans and mentorship to small business owners from underserved communities. Natasha had insisted her name be included equally. If they were building something together, it would be truly together. Sweet Surrender had expanded into 2 new locations, not because of Victor's money, but because media attention had brought curious customers who stayed for the quality. Natasha had hired 10 new staff members and was planning a cookbook. Victor had stepped back from some of his CEO duties, appointing trusted people to handle day-to-day operations, while he focused on projects that actually excited him. He spent more time in Natasha's bakery than in boardrooms, and he had never been happier. As they cut the ribbon to officially open the foundation, Victor pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Natasha gasped as he dropped to one knee in front of reporters, supporters, and dozens of cameras. Natasha Bennett, you walked into my life during a blackout and turned on every light inside me. You taught me that real wealth is not measured in bank accounts, but in genuine moments and honest connection. Will you marry me? Through tears, Natasha said yes. The photograph that went viral this time showed them embracing, backlit by the foundation, building bearing both their names. The caption read, "When two worlds collide, sometimes they create something beautiful." That night, alone in the apartment they now shared, Victor held Natasha close as they looked out over the city lights. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "All the scrutiny and judgment we face?" Natasha thought about the blackout night that started everything, the stranger who became her world, the fear she had pushed through to choose love over safety. "Not for a single second," she said, kissing him softly. "You are worth every difficult moment." And in that perfect instant, with the city glowing below them and their future stretching out bright and uncertain and completely theirs, they both knew they had found something rare. Not just love, but the courage to fight for it, the wisdom to nurture it, the strength to prove that when two hearts truly connect, nothing else matters. Their story had begun in darkness, but it would shine in the light forever. The end.